All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, Onboard Faster and Improve Performance with Success Plans. My name is Julie Dunn. I'm on our marketing team here at Level 11. I'm going to be helping out with today's presentation. Just to go over a couple housekeeping items, we do mute everybody's line to reduce that background noise, but we do encourage you to ask questions as those questions might come to you. So go ahead and use the GoToWebinar questions toolbox there on the right side of your screen to enter those in, and then we're going to be leaving time for dedicated Q&A towards the end of today's session. Lastly, I do want to mention that we are recording today's session, and we will be sending that out along with the slide deck within the next 24 hours or so after the webinar, so just keep your eye out for that. Sometimes it goes to spam and junk folder, so be sure to check there. But I'd like to begin today's presentation by introducing our presenters. We have Bob Marsh with us, founder and CEO of Level 11. Bob has held a variety of sales roles and has some great insight to share with us today. We also have Dana Landers, who is our customer success manager at Level 11. And she's going to be walking us through a demonstration on how you can easily integrate some of our performance planning right within Salesforce. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bob.
Great. Well, thanks, Julia. Thanks for all your help pulling this together. We've got a great topic here, I think, and also been getting just wonderful response. I think this topic of how to onboard faster and salespeople has been a really important topic that, as I talk to sales leaders every day, hear them talk about some of the struggles they face. So, we're excited about that. But then also, wrapped around that is our new product offering and success plan. So I think we're helping address that issue of onboarding faster as well as improving performance. So thank you. Quickly walk through our agenda here. So we got a kind of a mix of customers and prospects. So just to kind of help reset everybody, quick little slide on who's Level 11. Talk about really what is the overall state of the sales and sales management as a industry or whatever you want to call it. Why onboarding is so important. So I think we all understand that, but just put some numbers behind it. Why performance improvement, which is where I've got existing people that are struggling, like how do we make them better, and why is that such a challenge? Then we'll do a overview of our success plan product, including a demonstration. So Dana will walk us through that, so you can see specifically hands-on how that works. And then, as Julie mentioned, we'll open up for some Q&A at the end. So please submit along the way, and we'll address as many as we can at the conclusion. So again, just a quick little overview for those of you who aren't familiar. So Level 11, we're what we call a modern sales management system. So what that means is, I love the quote from our client, Josh Allen from Car Gurus, is that Level 11 closes the gap between what leadership expects and what salespeople actually do. And really what that means is that oftentimes the plans that you create at the beginning of the year have execution tied to them, and then the execution is dependent on the salespeople and sales managers, the actions they take every day. And so we really try to help fill that gap to make sure that there's excitement and motivation and accountability to delivering on the plan. So the product really breaks out into three main components, but it's all about the concept of how do we motivate the behaviors that matter. We do this through live leaderboards, gamification, and TV broadcasts that put your sales data up on the big monitors and create excitement and energy in the office. Through personalized rep and manager scorecards, so every rep knows exactly what's expected of them and where they need to focus their time. And then also through our new sales coaching program to create structure and consistency around how you coach and develop salespeople. So we are a fully native application for Salesforce.com. So it's a native managed package. It plugs right into your instance of Salesforce. Salespeople, sales managers, it all lives right within there. So it's not data, there's no data going outside of Salesforce, and you have one user experience, which is your existing use of Salesforce.com. So we're one of the top global app exchange partners, and Salesforce is a two-time investor in the company. So you see some of our clients to the right. We've got hundreds, and we're very proud of those that we work with. Very modern sales organizations trying to figure out how do we work with a new generation of sellers and how do we help our managers get better. So to segue in, what's going on in the overall world of sales and sales management? The first thing is that I think a number of people have seen this stat, which is always startling, is that salespeople only spend about 37% of their time actually selling. And this really is something that can improve. I think that anytime you talk to a manager, they often look around the sales floor and say, I see a lot of people who are dedicated, have good attitudes, they want to succeed, but I often wonder, are they really spending their time on the things that are going to move the needle? And it's not because anyone's malicious or that, it's just it's easy to get lost in non-selling activities thinking that you're making progress. And so the reality is this is never going to be 100%. But when we think about non-selling activities like writing proposals, analyzing data, cleaning up data, doing customer service, again, these things are important, but you can't let them weigh down too much of your time. You want to maximize the amount of time that your salespeople spend actually selling, making calls, prospecting for new accounts, building pipeline, having meetings, and of course, closing business. And so the question is, how can we adjust that to get more of that time, take it from 37 to 40% to 43%, whatever it might be. Let's make sure we're spending more time selling. So then you combine that with part of the reason this happens is that the expectations of performance that we have for salespeople is frankly sitting in a lot of different places, and it becomes wildly confusing. So we of course have an abundance of Salesforce reports, but often those are built in a way that that's simply not actionable. Sales rep is say, hey, we've got all that in a report. We've got activity, we've got demos, we've got meetings, we've got pipeline. It's all in a report. It seems like it's all perfectly available. But the problem is a lot of times people don't spend the time as a salesperson to go, let me go step back, let me look at my data, let me see the reports. Okay, now what is it saying to me? I got to drill into that report, understand what it's saying, decipher it. Is that good? Is that bad? I'm not really sure. As long as I'm at the top of a leaderboard, I guess that means I'm doing well. So it just gets very confusing. And again, the result is I see a lot of data, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it, which means it's not actionable. Second is, a lot of companies that try to combat that will create spreadsheets. They'll extract data out of Salesforce and say, okay, here's our daily, weekly, monthly goals. Let's show how people are progressing towards those goals. Are they on pace, behind pace, percent of goal? And it'll be put in these spreadsheets that then are shared at a team meeting or in a one-on-one to make it more digestible and understandable. The problem is that data is pulled after the fact when you can't really do anything about it anymore. It'll say, here's what happened last week or last month or last quarter. And people say, wow, that's really interesting. I wish we would have known that last quarter. We could have done something about it. Then lastly, again, when you're thinking about your rep, you've got reports, you've got spreadsheets, but then you have their manager. And the manager is talking to them about where they need to spend their time. But the unfortunate reality, and this is the core of our topic today, is that 73% of managers have received little or no training on how to be a good manager. And so we're going to spend a little bit more time on that one, of course. So let's talk about coaching, because coaching leads right into this topic of onboarding and performance improvement. So anybody who's a sales manager wants to be a good coach. Say, are you a coach? Yeah, I'm a coach. Do you coach people? Sure, I coach salespeople. They have these visions of a coach for a pro sports team, or maybe in their own experience in life, like they had a great coach and what that means, but then don't really understand how do I map that same concept to managing a group of salespeople. So this is some research that was put together by our friends over at Vantage Point Performance, and what they did is they studied how much time do managers think they're spending coaching on salespeople. So there's these conflicting perceptions here. So if you look at this, let me explain the table here. So on the left-hand side, so it's saying that 7% of sales managers will say, or maybe admit, that they're spending less than 3 hours per month coaching their salespeople. 55% of them say they coach their salespeople between 3 and 5 hours a month, and 38% of sales managers say that they coach their salespeople over 5 hours a month. However, when you ask salespeople the same question, how much coaching they're receiving, you see very different numbers. So 56% of sales reps are saying I get less than 3 hours of coaching per month. 32% say I'm receiving 3 to 5 hours a month, and 12% say they're receiving more than 5 hours a month. So it's a complete inverse of what you see on the left. So if you combine those, it's basically saying managers think they're delivering 93% of managers are delivering 3 or more hours a month of coaching, yet only 44% of salespeople actually think that's how much they're getting. So again, the view on what does coaching actually mean can be very different between the manager and the actual sales rep. So if we do this right, you can really tip the scales the other way. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish here, is how do we reduce the amount of non-selling time that we put our time into and increase the amount of time we spend actually selling on the behaviors and actions that are going to really move the needle. When you think about, go back to that stat, say 37% of their time selling, think about all the money your company is spending on people's salaries and technology, everything goes around it. And so the thought of that, that let's say 63% of that salary or that investment is going towards non-selling time, suddenly this starts to feel like a pretty dangerous issue and one that has to be addressed. So it's all about how do we drive more productivity, by spending more time on the selling activities that are going to really move the needle. So we've got all kinds of great case studies and what happens when you solve this problem and do this effectively. This is one of my favorites. So Mike Sadler is the VP of Corporate Sales at Everbridge, one of our clients up in the Boston area. And simply by applying more structure around sales managers coaching their salespeople with regularity. Now, this is a company, Mike had done a wonderful job of identifying the metrics they want to manage their salespeople around, but didn't have a consistent rhythm for how managers coach their salespeople. So simply by adding more structure to how managers are coaching and holding them accountable to actually doing it, that simple act alone drove a 33% increase in quality conversations with prospects. So again, everyone knew that was important. Salespeople knew it was important. Managers knew it was important, but they were lacking that weekly rhythm of let's make sure we talk about it and revisit your numbers and look at it every single week between the rep and the manager. And that consistency drove an increase in productivity significantly just by adding more discipline there. Next is another great example, which really hits into our onboarding example. So this is Janet Jansen, head of high velocity sales at Paycor down in Cincinnati. So what they did is they identified very specific metrics or objectives for their fully ramped reps. So how much pipeline you should have, how many first-time appointments you should have, how many calls or calls or emails you need to send. So that was all really clear for a ramped rep. What they did for their ramping reps, they set adjusted goals. So they were smaller, say in week 1 versus week 2 versus week 3, and they would ramp them as the rep was growing. And so what that allowed is that it allowed the sales rep to have clear expectations, say, okay, I understand it might take me 6 months to get onboarded to start selling something, but in the meantime, I'll know that I'm doing the right behaviors and activities that are going to lead to that. So by simply having that additional discipline and clarity for those onboarding reps, they cut their onboarding time in half, which is really incredible. And we're going to talk about some of those numbers in a minute, but the concept of if you think in your plan that you need to wait 6 months for someone to be onboarded and they can be hitting their quota in only 3 months, that is a remarkable difference in the company's ability to grow even faster. In addition, because they were so clear in expectations and could ramp faster, that meant it was also easier to identify who was going to work and who wasn't. So they reduced attrition from the sales team because they were getting them successful faster and they wanted to stick around. So pretty incredible numbers here that kind of prove it all. So let's talk about this a little bit more. So why is onboarding important? And what I mean is that we all know, like, hey, I got to onboard our new reps. Like we've just recently hired salespeople, and we're really spending time on how do we coach them effectively so they can get up to speed as fast as possible. But let's just look at the raw numbers of it. So I'm just going to give a really simplistic example. I mean, this would be a very small sales team, but I think it'll make the point. So let's just say you have a sales team of 5. So you've got 3 account executives they've been around for a while, they're ramped, and let's say they hit $250,000 a month, or I'm sorry, $250,000 a quarter is what a fully ramped rep would do. So we've got those numbers. This is my plan for the year. But I'm going to hire 2 new salespeople starting in Q1. And so the ramping process is say 6 months. So I'm going to say in the first quarter, they're going to do $50,000. The second quarter, they're going to do $100,000. And then by Q3, they'll be fully ramped, and they're up to that $250K number. So again, this isn't like perfect for every company, but trying to make the point. So what I'm doing here is as a leader, say, all right, for my team, I've got a full year quota of $4.3 million, and I'm building this off of the assumption my existing reps, at the end of the year, some will beat it, some will miss it, some will hit it right on the mark. But then I also expect these new hires to ramp up in this reasonable effort. So you want to make sure you set those goals in a way that are proper, but this is a very common kind of setup. So that's let's just say that's your quota. Again, your quota, $4.3 million for a year. I'm going to hire these people to be fully ramped by Q3. Well, what happens if you could ramp them just 1 quarter faster? If you could just speed that up like Paycor did and just shrink that thing down a little bit. So instead of them being ramped by Q3, now I've got them fully ramped to this $250K by Q2. So by doing that, I've just added $300,000 in additional closed business in this year against my plan of 4.3. So I just beat my number. When everyone else just hit their number, all I did was made them ramp a little bit faster. That's extra money that you can help you hit your quota. So that's again, when you magnify this by, let's say you have 50 reps or 100 reps, multiply this by 10 or 20, and you start, this number adds up really significantly, and that's more money you can be putting back into the company, back into marketing, back into product, whatever it might be. The other part is where it gets really hairy on us is what happens if you mishire. So if you don't ramp a person effectively and you struggle with them, so let's just say one of those new hires does fine, they ramp up, it takes them the 2 quarters to ramp by Q3, but what if one of those other people doesn't work out? So they hit their number in Q1, but then they're really behind in Q2, and you realize, like, wow, I think I made a mistake here. I don't think this person's going to be able to do it. And then you have to start all over again. So I'd say if you're lucky, you'd get that person replaced in Q3, but now you have to start the whole process over again. So in your original plan, you expected somebody to be doing 250K by now, but now you're starting with a whole new person. And so that means in their first quarter, they're only going to do 50K, which is 200K below what you originally had, and then they're going to do 100K in Q4, now that's 150. You've now added up to a pretty significant miss on your full year number. So again, trying to understand and explain the impact of why onboarding quickly is so important, and onboarding successfully is really vital, as you can see in the summary of the numbers here. So really, ultimately, performance improvement, which is a combination of onboarding people, but also if you've got people that are struggling, you want to figure out, how do I improve their performance as fast as I can? And so why is this important? It's important because your goal as a manager or a leader is I want to make my good salespeople great. I want to make my great salespeople exceptional. Like, that is your goal. That's how you want to be thinking of it. And the reason is that because making those existing people better is always an advantage over starting over. Now, that's just a general blanket statement. Of course, there's extremes. You got someone who's toxic to the company or like it's really awful. Of course, you have to start over. But overall, if you think about my existing team, if you can make them better, it's a much better way to grow the company than just quickly kind of whiplash removing people if they're just not hitting it exactly. So your existing team has some history. They understand the company. They understand the culture. They understand the product a little bit. So that's kind of why you always want to say, if I take those existing people and leverage what they've learned about the product and the market, the objections, et cetera, they have that on their side that a new person just simply wouldn't have. So you always, the best route is to make your existing people better. Of course, there's extreme examples where that doesn't work and you have to make a change. We're going to get into that. So really, it's all about making small improvements. If I can just make everybody a little bit better, I mean, just 10% better, think about what the math says. You make your existing people more successful, they'll make more money, you'll have less employee churn because now they're doing well. And if you think about it, if I've got a 100-person sales team making everyone 10% better, that's almost like adding 10 more people, but you don't have the cost burden of their salaries and more managers you'd need to manage those people and all the enablement, technology, and everything that comes with it. So I was recently talking to one of our larger clients, and we talked about this topic, and they said, you know what, if we could, again, make our existing people better, they're going to be happier, they're going to be doing better with our company, they're going to be making more money, makes them less likely to go somewhere else because the grass appears to be greener on the other side. That's going to make us successful, make them happier, and it's going to drive so much more positivity around the whole company, and we all do well. So again, the problem here goes back to a lot of these managers don't always know how to do this effectively. So the question becomes, well, why is this such a problem? Like, why do we feel like making other existing people better? We all want to do that, but there's some realities to often we don't do a good enough job as we really need to as we onboard and improve performance. So think about, well, why is this? And I think the answer is pretty straightforward. So let's step back a minute and think about your frontline managers. Your typical frontline sales manager is usually a former successful sales rep. They're very good at the job. They're ambitious in their careers. They want to move up the ladder. Suddenly the company needs another sales manager. And who do you go pluck from? You go find, hey, let's go find one of our great salespeople on the hopes that they're going to make everyone else better and they can swoop in and close deals themselves. Like, that's just kind of what happens, and we can understand that. But it's their first time leading a team. It's their first time really understanding people and how do I manage and make other people better. So they intuitively, what they did is they were successful because they had the instincts to do what mattered. They tended to do the daily activities. They were always prospecting. They were always good at asking good questions. They were good at listening. They were always out in the field. They were always building pipeline. And a lot of natural great salespeople, they have these instincts to do it. They don't need to be reminded. They don't need to be micromanaged around it. They just do it. But the problem is they move into that sales management role and they just assume that everybody else understands that too because it's completely natural to them. But the problem is they quickly realize, oh my gosh, all these people are not like me. And in fact, a very small portion of them are like you. So you get into, let's just say if you look at a team here, you're going to find that, these managers that move up, they're typically these high achievers because they're trying to grow in their career. They want to move up. They've been very successful, but they represent only about 15% of the entire sales organization. And you've got the people at the bottom that are really struggling, but the majority of your team is that middle. That's 70% of that entire organization is those middle performers. And those are the ones that need the guidance. Those are the ones that need more specifics and coaching and development on, just help me be a little bit better. And so this research that Maritz pulled together explained how if you just make everyone just 5% better, just a little bit better, overall as a company, that drives a 60% increase in performance. So this is just doing some math, because the reason is, if you make your top performers just a little bit better, you're only in a 100-person sales team, you're only affecting about 15 people. And like, how much of an improvement are you going to make? Because they're already great. So the improvement might be pretty marginal. Same thing with the bottom. If I make them a little bit better, but again, the problem is there's only 15 of them. But if I can make all these 70 people just a little bit better, now it all starts adding up. So that's got to be the focus. And again, if you go back to that new manager, they get in and realize, wow, the majority of my team, again, good attitude, they work hard, they, et cetera, but they're not doing the things that I expect them to do every day, and it's getting in the way. I can make them more successful. So that's kind of where we need to, where managers need to be focusing their efforts. So with that, I'd like to transition and announce our new product called Success Plan. So this bakes into our coaching product, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But the quick summary here is we were hearing from our customers that as we onboard salespeople, or we need to drive more performance improvement, we really need more structure and consistency around how we do this, how we onboard, and how we help struggling salespeople get better. And really, again, those frontline managers who are learning how to coach, they need specific direction around how to do that effectively. They want to do it effectively, but as we talked about earlier with the research, they're not trained on how to do it effectively. So the goal of Level 11 Success Plans is to help add some structure and consistency to that, so that we can do it effectively. So with that, I will hand it over to Dana, who will walk us through the demo.
All right, thanks, Bob. So what we're going to walk through a little bit today is basically just how to go about creating a success plan and what a completed success plan looks like. So the screen that you're currently seeing is probably a screen that some of you are familiar with, and this is the manager scorecard view. So this is essentially giving you a pulse on your team as a whole. So how is your entire team doing across the behaviors that matter most and that are going to make them most successful? So if we...
We'll have to click on the screen.
Right here.
Dana's got used to my mouse, my trackpad. You go the opposite way.
Yeah, so forgive me if I'm going in the wrong direction here or there. So on this screen, this just gives you a way to look into specific behaviors, see how your team is performing over time, see team performance as well as individual performance. So this is going to give you just some insight into the team's activity. From Manager Scorecard, you can also go into what we call the Team Members tab, which I think is probably the most beneficial view in all of Scorecard.
For a manager.
For a manager, yeah. So it's really great. I mean, it's just this grid view where you can see, versus the Activity tab where you're seeing the entire team. This is a way for you to see it on a more granular level per person. So each metric is color-coded by their pace. So it's green if they're ahead of pace, blue if they're on pace, red if they're behind pace. You can click into each person and see more information about their performance, sort of by columns. But this is a great way for you to be able to see how the team is doing as a whole.
So this is all like existing customers who have our scorecard product. This is what everybody sees. So that's that. So yeah, let's take a look at some of the coaching and the new success plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I go into this coaching section as a manager, the first thing that I'm going to see as soon as it loads is all of the one-on-one sessions that I've logged for members of my team in the past. So
really, that's any coaching, right? So like there's going to be many types of coaching notes. You're going to see here's all the coaching notes for my whole team. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So you can see them, by default, you're given the last 30 days. You can see up to the last year here. So this is a great place for you to access the different coaching conversations. And again, this is all existing currently. But what we are going to talk about next is success plans. So success plans are essentially a way for you to put a specific date range around a time when someone's going to be coached. And it's a great way to communicate expectations for that person during that time. So two very common examples of this are when someone's onboarding, which Bob just spoke to quite a bit. but also a performance improvement plan. So if someone is frequently behind pace on the metrics that are assigned to them, if they're not meeting expectations, so success plans is a great way to explain the expectations of that person for how they can improve, and then capture.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and capture the coaching conversations that occur while they're on that performance improvement plan.
One of the things that we often see, and then a lot of managers tend to do, again, especially if they're new to management, and that is that a new hire comes on, and like what typically happens, you got a new hire, and they just say, hey, just let me know when I can help you. Like, here's your quota, here's your peers, here's some stuff to read. Like, go get it, and that's it. And that's an extreme example, but a lot of times the managers don't necessarily know, how do I onboard someone effectively? So that's kind of the idea. And similar with the performance improvement plan is, hey, this person's not hitting it. I keep telling them that they really should know that they're not doing well. But again, that manager doesn't know, how do I have a tough conversation with somebody, and what do I want to make sure we're talking about, and is it documented? So those two things kind of end up going together here. So that's what we're trying to address for a manager.
Absolutely. So just to review a completed success plan before we go into how one will be created, I'm going to jump into this onboarding plan. So essentially, when you go into a completed success plan, you're given a little bit of information at the top. You have a subject. You have the template that you've used. So one great thing about success plans is that for each team, you can have different templates. So obviously, your onboarding conversation and those questions surrounding the onboarding process are very different than the questions that would be surrounding, say, a performance improvement plan or something similar.
So here we're looking at, so you're the manager, Dana, right? Okay, so we see on there, and then Lauren is this new hire. So this is something that you've filled out as a manager that gets delivered to Lauren to say, here's kind of my expectations for you as you're onboarding.
Yep, exactly. Right. Yep, so this can be completed right when that person starts on the team. And so that way they know exactly what the expectations are for them for maybe, what may be a 90-day process as an example. For their first 90 days, what are their new manager's expectations? And those dates are clearly defined right here at the top of the success plan, so you can see exactly what the dates are from beginning to end. So once you scroll down, you have this series of questions, and all of these are very customizable, the same way that coaching note questions are. But in this example, we're identifying a few different time frames around the onboarding process. So you can see the first question is, what do you expect this person to accomplish in week 1? I, as the manager, have filled out what my expectations are. So whether that's shadow my fellow AEs, sit in on some discovery calls. The next question is, what are the expectations for the first 30 days? And so the last question is, what are your expectations for the first 60 days?
And again, we have these are just kind of generic examples, but if a customer's got their own unique things that they want to include here in their own questions, we can do those too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see, again, when we move into the other template, there are different question types as well. So you can really customize this quite a bit. You can have as many questions as you'd like. This is just a short example. But if you scroll down,
so Lauren gets this, and now she's going to see, oh, okay, now it's really clear to me what Dana expects of me as I'm onboarding.
Absolutely, and even more so on that point, as a manager, you can also identify action items that have different due dates throughout the 90 days or whatever time frame you set for this onboarding. So these are different things that just over the course of your onboarding process, I, as a manager, want you to complete. So maybe that's watch a kickoff video. Maybe that's, get up to speed on training materials. And I've assigned different due dates on each of these. And as a rep, you can come in here and check off each action item as you complete them during the onboarding process. So the last section of every success plan, and I think this is really great because as you saw in the notes section, when you first come into the coaching area, it's all of your coaching notes in general, regardless of if, they're assigned to regardless of note type or anything like that. Each success plan has an area at the bottom of the plan that captures all the notes that are created for a rep during that time period. So in this case, this is a 90-day onboarding plan. Any coaching note that's created and completed within that first 90 days will be captured in the bottom of this plan. So if I want to go back maybe in a 90-day review, pull up the success plan, take a look at the action items, take a look at the expectations, and we can even click through a couple notes. So I'll click on.
Before you do that, so basically, so the success plan is a one-time thing. Like here's the expectations, so they're written down and they're clear. But then this part is any coaching conversation that happens during that time period that you've defined above, whether it's a weekly one-on-one or a meeting feedback or anything, would all get loaded into this group. So you can say, hey, let me look at how did this new hire do and where are all the coaching conversations we had over time.
Yep, exactly. Yep, and then you can click on any coaching note that's in the bottom of each success plan, and that will bring you into the coaching note.
This is our one-on-one template.
Yeah, so this is an example of a coaching note, very similar, as you can see, but there's some dialogue in here, which is really helpful for coaching conversations. So again, very similar format where you have the rep or the team member, the manager that created the coaching note, the date it was created on, and then each coaching question. So again, as Bob just mentioned, this is a very generic one-on-one conversation where you have the manager's feedback and the rep's feedback captured in this note. You can capture activity snapshots of how someone's doing currently.
And the left, those are just, if you hover over those are abbreviations like NP. So whatever metrics the customer's got in their scorecard, it would pull all that data in here so you have that history.
Yep, exactly.
This is just part of standard coaching. This is a success plan. So
right.
This kind of gives some context around what a one-on-one might look like.
Yep, exactly. So this is, essentially each of these coaching notes is connected back to that success plan, and you can access them at any time through there. So it's a great way to keep different coaching notes together, and the success plan acts almost as if it's like a folder for that period in time, capturing all of those conversations.
Great, so that's the onboarding example.
Yep, so now we're just going to quickly walk through what it looks like to actually create a coaching note for someone. So I'm going to go down and select Brad Smith, and we are going to put Brad Smith on a performance improvement plan. So I'm going to go ahead, I just selected his name from the list of salespeople over here on the left, which this view, again, is the same as what currently exists in our coaching area of Manager Scorecard. And so I've just selected Brad, and I'm going to select Create a New Success Plan. So all I'm going to do here is just give this a name. So give it the name of Performance Improvement Plan. Select my start and end dates. So I'll just select a couple dates here. So you just select those from the calendar. They pop right up into these start and end dates. And then the next step is selecting your template. So as I mentioned, you can have various different templates assigned to each profile in Scorecard. So like I said, onboarding questions different than performance improvement questions. So in this case, we're going to look at a performance improvement template, and you can have as many templates on a profile as you'd like. So you're not limited by any means to how many you have available.
And these questions that we're about to go, these are, again, we just build these generic ones as an example of in our demo org, but each client can make whatever questions they want in there.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Like I saw a number of our clients looking at one for one of them, I don't remember who it was. Like they had this all figured out, but it was sitting in a PDF somewhere or in a document, some internal drive on the company's intranet, and it's like, oh yeah, where do I sign that? And then there's no documentation. So point is, a lot of the stuff already exists, but it's sitting in some separate system. We can just customize this to be whatever your company uses, or we can help you build one from scratch if you need guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at this example of a performance improvement plan, you can see this is what I mentioned earlier as far as some different question types. So our first question here is a scale question of, just a general rating on a scale of 1 to 5. How is this or what's my overall rating of this AE? Obviously, this person's on a performance improvement plan. It's likely that they're probably somewhere between a 1 and a 3. But here's a chance for you to just capture a general rating. And then as a manager, I'm going to identify what some areas are where this AE needs to improve. So these are some like high hitting points of where, if someone's doing well in all these areas, they'll be successful. So I can identify some areas where this person is really struggling. So that may, quota attainment is probably a big one if this person's an AE. So that may be quota attainment in combination with, not having a positive attitude and being kind of toxic on the team. So you can identify what the different areas where someone is really having a tough time. And then once you've selected those, you can provide some additional details in this next question. So again, just an example, but You can provide some specific areas or examples of times when someone has struggled with the different areas that you just identified. And then here's where you can set expectations. So what specific results do I want to see from this AE in the next 30 days, given that this is a 30-day performance improvement plan? So what are like 3 to 5 tangible, measurable things that I can put in front of this person as my expectations and ask them to meet so we can avoid any other consequences? And then finally, what strengths should this AE build on? So is there anything else that's not identified in the areas above, or maybe they are identified in the areas above, where this AE really needs to focus on improving? Maybe something that they're okay at that they need to be better at, maybe just quota attainment is an example of that. So finally, in this, we have this last question here: what will happen if the objectives are not met that are identified above? Our examples here are termination or changing to a new role. There may be other options as well, but just kind of closing the loop and saying, these are the expectations, but let's also make it very clear what will happen if these aren't met. So again, this can be totally customized. This is just an example. But once this is completed, so once I've filled all of this out, I would just hit complete and send as a manager, and then that would send an email notification over to Brad letting him know that a new success plan has been created for me with a link to access it in Scorecard.
So I think the reason this is important, and so I think you're making it clear, like, so we're just an example, you can customize this and put whatever you want, but the key here, and I hope this is kind of coming through to the audience, is that now you're enabling the manager. Like, how many times have I've heard stories of, a manager saying, hey, did you talk to Joe or Brad, this example, about the fact that, like, he's got to turn around or, it's not going to work out? Yeah, I talked to him. Okay, when did you talk to him? Oh, I've just, like, I've told them, like, pretty clear, like, we went to lunch last week and I told them it's not working out. Okay, well, like, did you document it? Well, no, but it's really obvious, like, so, yeah. Or they say, okay, well, did you tell him what specifically he needs to improve upon? Well, he's got to hit quota. Okay, well, that's obvious. So did you tell him, like, how long he has? Did you tell him what's going to happen if it doesn't? So this is stuff that's hard. It's really hard for anybody to do, by the way. Like, it's not a fun conversation. Mm-hmm. But the idea here is that a new manager in particular really struggles with how to do that effectively. But if you're an employee, this is where, like, if you read about this sort of stuff, it's actually very effective because the employee just wants to know, like, be clear with me about what's happening, what do I need to do, and I just want to know. Mm-hmm. Like, so that's where it does end up being, anyone in HR understands, if you make this stuff clear, aside from maybe the legal side, which, can sometimes be an issue, or it's also like what's right and what's appropriate and what's just the right thing to do. So, yeah. So the whole idea here is help managers do this effectively, which is really better and more fair for the employee too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just increasing the visibility into that and kind of like documenting some of this prevents any miscommunication or misinterpretation of those types of conversations too, which is really helpful. And that actually is a great segue into, so I'm gonna cancel out of this and I'm going to jump into this completed note just so you can see what it looks like when it's finished. But you'll see that this one is highlighted in red and shows that we're waiting on Brad Smith to acknowledge the feedback. So just like we have with our standard coaching notes, so for anyone who has coaching, you may be familiar with this functionality already, but you can require acknowledgement from the rep. So basically when they get the notification that a success plan has been created and they go into this coaching tab, they would see this success plan highlighted in red saying that we're waiting for them to acknowledge feedback, and they would have to go into it and hit a button within the note saying that they acknowledge the feedback. And what that does is it creates a timestamp. So this little eye icon indicates that rep acknowledgement is required, and if you hover over that for a note that's been acknowledged, it has a timestamp for when Brad has gone in and acknowledged the feedback that was provided in the plan. So it's really helpful just in terms of like making sure and documenting that someone understood the expectations and whatever repercussions might happen should the expectations not be met. Or for a new employee, just to make sure that there's no miscommunication, that they can go in there, and if they do have any questions, that kind of prompts them to ask before they just say, okay, that all sounds great, sure, I'll meet those expectations. So rep acknowledgement is a huge part of just increasing accountability too, on both sides. So like I said, this is just a plan that we completed earlier. So an example, again, just
this is what the rep would see. They would receive this and they'd see, here's what their manager said and answer those questions.
Yep, exactly. So once something's completed, both the manager and the rep have the exact same view of that from the coaching tab. So this, again, just has the title, which template we used, which rep this is for, the manager that created it, and the start and end date. So this is about a 30-day performance improvement plan. And then you can see the manager's responses to each of these questions. So what is the overall rating of the AE? What are the areas that were identified where this AE needs to improve the most? What are the specific examples for each of those? Maybe quota attainment is behind where it should be, activity is too low, and maybe this person's a little bit frustrated and is bringing some of that negativity into the office. So what are the specific expectations over the next 30 days? What strengths can this person build on? You know, so maybe working on pipeline to increase quota attainment, you know, working on their pitch or their objection handling, that might be what's holding them back from quota attainment. And then finally, what will happen if the above objectives aren't met? So just identifying what those may be. And then again, rep acknowledgement is on. So if, in this case, if Brad hasn't acknowledged this by a certain point, then you can send a reminder from within the screen. And then just like with the onboarding template, any coaching conversations that are held during this performance improvement plan, those will be captured from the screen. So, you know, at the end of the 30 days, you can come in here, review this, and review all of the coaching conversations that have occurred. And remember, those coaching conversations will contain activity snapshots and things like that that relate directly back to some of these expectations that were set forth in the performance improvement plan.
So great. So that's really the summary of success plans. Those are the two probably most common use cases. So onboarding, I think, is probably the most used or most popular and most needed, but then also you can use this for the performance plan. So, so one other thing, just while we're in here. So lately, Dana, as I've been talking to a number of customers, I've seen some really creative uses of custom coaching notes around meeting feedback or call feedback or call coaching. So can you share that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. I've seen this a lot with some of our customers that are actively using coaching right now. So, you know, in addition to having one-on-one conversations that are really about someone's, you know, career or their performance, sometimes more specific coaching
this could be anybody.
Needed.
So it's not necessarily if they're on a plane. It's like anybody. You want to give them feedback on how the call went.
Yeah. So, so one thing that we have seen, to Bob's point, is specific conversations around how a meeting went, how a demo went, how a call went, et cetera. So we may have this example of a meeting feedback note. So I'm going to select a meeting feedback template here. So we have this set up so that the manager can basically have access to, they can get a link either from Salesforce, from like meeting notes that have been logged for, you know, maybe a demo, or maybe like a link to a call recording somewhere. Yeah,
I guess where I saw we had some clients that are using, say, SalesLoft as an example, as a dialer, which could really work with anything. They just put a link in here, a link to the actual call recording.
Yep.
That could pop right here.
Yeah. Yep. So you can just paste that link, or you can even hyperlink that text too. And then you can have a couple questions here that are about that meeting or about that call. So for example, on a scale of 1 to 5, how was your overall rating of the meeting? How was the opening of the meeting? So did the person do a good job of you know, establishing some background and doing introductions? And then did this person...
This is one again, happened. We're just building an example template here, but you know, I saw a customer the other day, like they invested a lot of money getting their team trained on like Sandler sales methodology, and you know, one of the things they want to make sure to reinforce is like, hey, make sure you do an upfront contract at the beginning of the call. So again, you can insert whatever your methodology is into this template.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally here, just, you know, did this rep ask good questions while they were on the call or during the meeting? Did they establish clear next steps? Did they do a good job of kind of setting expectations at the end of the call? setting up any next steps with the prospect, and then any other general feedback. So just kind of an area for any additional notes that they'd like to share. So finally, when that's done, yep, they can just complete that. And again, it will send a notification to Brad letting them know that a meeting feedback note has been created for him.
Great. So yeah, I want to show just really creative use. I've seen this multiple times over just in the last couple of weeks, where customers are creating all kinds of stuff. So, we've really become this coaching platform, we call it our management system, where people create all kinds of different coaching note types because it's got immense flexibility there. So, that's really cool. So all right, so let's kind of jump back and then we'll start taking some questions. So for those of you that are on the phone, so customers or prospects, the way this works, so if you already have our coaching product offering, so Success Plans is now available to you. So just contact your customer success manager and they can help get you trained up and working on that. But it's part of our coach package. So for those of you who are new to Level 11, we have 3 different editions. We have Motivate, which is kind of the standard leaderboard, broadcast TV, data on your sales TVs, screen splashes for deal alerts, whatever it might be. Engage, which includes the personal and manager scorecards that we saw, and then the Coach edition adds all the coaching capabilities that we just saw, and there's many more things coming out this year. So that's mostly it. To recap, research just shows that coaching is really important and it makes a difference, but you've got to do it effectively. Frontline managers need and are craving guidance on how to be better at their jobs because they want to keep excelling in their careers and make other people better. And we saw some of the numbers, like onboarding faster, making existing people more productive. It will really drive the outcomes you want. It's better for everybody. And then, certainly, of course, consider adding a system around all of this to create more accountability and make things a lot more effective. So we have plenty more content. You can certainly request a demo to learn a lot more. We've got other content around the general concept of coaching. And with that, we will open it up to any questions.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and use GoToWebinar, the questions pane on the right side of your screen to enter questions that you might have. But we're going to try to go through as many questions that came in. I'm going to put them in the chat box so that people can see what people are asking. I'm going to do my best to do that here. So the first question that came in is, how can you consistently measure selling time when there will inevitably be non-selling time activities like travel that are inconsistent from week to week?
So this concept, so I'm glad someone asked, kind of says this concept of maximizing selling time is resonating there. So, first of all, generally the way companies measure this is they'll do their general surveys of like how much time are you spent selling, et cetera. That's how this research firm, CSO Insights, comes out with that stat every year, the new version of it. But really, it's what it comes down to is, of course, people are going to travel. People are sick, people take a break, they get really buried in an RFP, or I don't know, there's all kinds of reasons. But the key is that if and we've talked about this in other webinars of ours, is that if you say, all right, if our goal for the year, an individual rep's quota for the year is, say, $1 million, how do I reverse engineer that back into the day-to-day activities that are needed? So if I need $1 million and I need to build $4 million in pipeline, to build that much pipeline, I need to have certain many first-time appointments, I need to make a certain number of calls, do a certain number of demos, whatever it might be. So you just start, again, working that back into what does that mean in terms of daily, weekly, and or monthly objectives. So when it comes to selling time, the key is if you make those objectives clear so that everyone knows, all right, in order to hit my number, this is what I need to do. I need to have this many calls, I need to have this many demos, I need to build this much pipeline, I need to have this many proposals, and this will get me to my number. So that's what it comes down to. If you keep people focused on here's what's needed to get to your number, that will make sure that their selling time is spent effectively. So here's what we often see, is that companies already have that stuff defined, but the performance to those goals and those metrics are buried in Salesforce reports where no one goes and looks at them like I just talked about, or they're pulled in the spreadsheet that's talked about every week. When you make those numbers front and center, personalized for every rep and manager, they start operating more in real time to say, whoa, I know I'm busy on this RFP right now, but man, oh man, I gotta get on the phone because I'm falling behind now. I'm pacing behind on my demo metric, or I'm slipping on my pipeline. I got to make sure to redivert my time. So those small decisions that can be made in real time every day, every week, that's what's going to make sure your selling time is maximized. Because otherwise, if you don't have that stuff front and center, you find yourselves at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter saying, why does our pipeline look so bad, let's go pull up the numbers and say, oh, that's why, because 3 months ago, we got so buried in that training or whatever it might be that everyone stopped building pipeline. Gosh, I wish I would have known that back then because we could have done something about it. So that's the key. It's like set your goals and then make sure people always know where they stand all day, every day. And then you have that management rhythm around to coach people on it, do those one-on-ones, and make sure you're talking about it. So that'll maximize your selling time right there.
Great. So what's the average length of time that you'd suggest we put someone on a performance plan?
So I assume that this isn't referring to the onboarding part. So performance meaning like someone's struggling and I got to put them on a plan. So the average length, about 30 days. I mean, I've seen them as short as a couple of weeks. That would be for maybe a really high velocity sales organization, that maybe can turn around. I've seen sometimes as long as 60 days. But generally 30 days is about the typical. I think what's really important, and we've often probably all experienced this, is that it's really important to be clear. I've been through enough situations early in my career or observing others where, if you say very clearly, here's your numbers, here's where they need to be, like you need to make this many calls, have this many appointments, et cetera, and you got to do that every week. Suddenly they're not doing it, and they come in 3 weeks later and be like, all right, I know you've made it really clear, I'm not doing it. It's obvious I need to move on, so that's it. So anyway, so to specifically answer the question, 30 days would be the typical average. Now that presumes that there has been some maybe advance notice or like it's clear, like, hey, this is not in a good position, like you're really behind, I need you to fix it. So managers should be talking about that regularly. But when it gets to the point where you're like, all right, enough is enough, we need to now make this official. From that point on is generally 30 days, which you decide, hey, are they going to come out of it successfully, or is it time to part ways?
So this question's from an existing customer. We use Level 11 for our sales team. How would we get this feature turned on? So
again, it's part of if you have our coach package, which not everybody does. So if you just have scorecard but have not purchased coaching, you would still need to purchase coaching. But assuming you have that, so Dana, you want to talk about what someone needs to do to get success plans set up?
Yeah, absolutely. So to Bob's point, you would have to have coaching, and you would just go ahead and set this up by going into Scorecard Builder, so kind of the admin area of the Level 11 platform, and from Scorecard Builder.
Yeah, like right in here, right?
Yep,
so if I go
exactly.
into Scorecard Builder,
Mm-hmm.
So if you have coaching,
and
you see these two. This is new.
Yep.
Okay.
So success plan templates will be available for you to select, and you would just have to create a template first. So once you have a template created and available, you would then go ahead and go to a specific scorecard profile. So as an example, we were operating out of our account executive profile and scorecard during the demonstration. You would then just go ahead and hit a checkbox to enable success plans at the top of the profile, and then in the last section on the profile, just open that up. It's titled Success Plans, and just select which template you want to assign. So all of it happens from the Scorecard Builder tab, from the Success Plan template section, and then the profile section.
And then so you would go into profile.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
so like go into AE as an example.
Yep.
And say, okay,
go to Success Plans.
Yeah,
yep. The same place where you assign
profile.
coaching templates, you would do Success.
Because you might have a unique onboarding questions or performance improvement that could be different for, say, an SDR versus an inside rep versus a field rep.
Mm-hmm.
You might have slightly different questions. So
yep.
you add it to the profile level. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So another question that came in, obviously the roots of your offerings come from the sales side of an organization, but I'm wondering whether or not onboarding functionality within success plans could be used more broadly across the organization.
I most certainly could. I mean, what we just talked about is kind of some basic fundamentals of management, not even specifically sales management. I mean, that's the context of what we're talking about today, but anytime you need to onboard employees or have performance plans, like you need to go through a similar process that we just went through. Level 11 is largely designed for a sales organization or for a service organization, so account management or a call center or support center, where you really have those metrics as part of it. But in terms of our product offering, as long as the employees that you're thinking about here are users of Salesforce, or if you get licenses of Salesforce, there's no reason why you couldn't use this functionality for those team members as well.
So how much does this cost, and is the license just for managers?
So this is this is part of the coaching product. So talk to your account manager or your level 11 account executive, and you can get more specific pricing, which is all driven by things like how many users do you have, which edition do you want to buy, length of contract term, there's a lot of different factors. Everything Level 11 has is priced on a per user per month basis with an annual or multi-year contract. But again, those per user per month fees will vary based on which edition, number of users, and all the things that I talked about. So the licenses are for anybody that would be using Scorecard, which includes the salespeople as well as the managers, and then usually have a couple people in sales operations that have a license if they want to provide help for configuration and that sort of thing.
Great. So that covers the questions that came in and we received today. So if if you come up with questions after the fact, please reach out to us. You can contact us directly from our website. Just a reminder that we did record today's presentation, so we'll be sending out a recording along with the slide deck within the next 24 hours or so. So just be sure to check your spam or junk folder. Sometimes the email ends up there. But other than that, thank you to Bob and Dana for presenting today, and thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.